All right, hey everybody, Levi here with Simple Life Crew Outdoors. Had a deer get hit on the road the other day, so here we are. We are going to make a batch of venison and potatoes, canned venison and potatoes. So we're just going to go through kind of step-by-step process of what I do here. So let's get started. All right, so first, obviously, we need our venison. Ta-da! Chilled. Got to have that chilled. So it's been cut up, it's been chilled, and now I need to actually finish cutting it up, dicing it. Try to get some of the sinew out. Luckily, pressure canning it, you don't have to get all the sinew out. It will literally cook it right out of it. That's the beauty about pressure canning. And obviously, a batch of potatoes. I might see if I can find some more potatoes, because just judging by how much meat is there, I might need more than 6 potatoes. I might need like 10 potatoes, but we're gonna go with what I got here. First things first, let's wash these taters and get them cut up. All right, taters are washed, make sure they're good and clean. We're just gonna go through and we're gonna cube them. Want them to be probably less than a half an inch, probably more like 3/8 of an inch is what we're looking for. So we're gonna dice each one of them up. 3/8 of an inch. Again, it's not a precise math or anything. Doesn't have to be perfect. It's not a rocket science. Just make sure they're good and clean. You don't want any dirt on them. All right, so now we're down to the venison here. So I'm gonna take all this venison out. I'm gonna wash it all really good. I already rinsed it once, but I'm gonna rinse it again, and then I'm gonna cut it up into cubes or strips. Cubes preferably. All right, so now I'm gonna cut off like the real thick sinew. Said again, you don't have to get super intricate with it, but like this, you can see where the deer got hit. And obviously that's some of the bruising. Obviously you don't want any of that bruised blood in there, of course, because that will also unflavor it some. So there we go. Now that I got most of the sinew out of it, again, you can see like this little strip of sinew, don't worry about it. It'll cook right out of it. Now I'm just gonna cube it up in little chunks. Now again, these chunks don't have to be perfect. You can make them a ½ inch, you can make them 3/4 of an inch. I usually probably try to shoot for that. I mean, you can leave them big meatier chunks like that if you like, but I'll cut these up, make them into chunks, y'all, give or take like so. That's about 3/4 by inch, give or take. So you see this big cheek piece, it's covered in sinew, thin sinew. Don't worry about it. Cut the whole thing right up just like that. Just cut it in chunks. All right, so there we go. Ta-da! Bunch of beautiful cubed, somewhat stripped chunks. A nice pile of potatoes. Ta-da! So while I was doing all that, I have my pot right next to me here sanitizing all of my cans. So that's boiling away right now. It's just getting boiling. I gotta give about 10 minutes and then I'll start packing them. Alrighty, so there goes our timer there. I'm gonna turn off our heat. Now, our jars are sanitized. So I'm gonna get these ones out, get them set so we can start packing them. Okay, so there we go. I've got 6 jars here hot and ready to go. So now it's time that I start putting some of the meat and potatoes in there. Now you're not supposed to add any water liquid to it. I have before and it works just fine. You're supposed to just pack them tight up to about 1 inch from the top. So inch, 3/4 of an inch roughly from the top. So basically now it's just a matter of going along and you just start throwing a little bit of each in. Just going back and forth to kind of keep them mixed up. All right, I'm not seeing my little packer, so I'm just gonna have to kind of do it by hand here. So, and just by doing that, I'm instantly able to add more into this jar. So, once I have done that, now I'll go along, throw a little bit more in there. Not a lot more though, because it is getting close. A little bit of potatoes back in there, a little bit. that there. Okay, there we go. All right, so now I gotta wipe these lids off, so I'm gonna wash my hands first. We gotta add a little magic into this. So, now it says for every quart you should put in roughly a teaspoon of salt. Me, on the other hand, I'd rather have a little bit more, because the more salt you have, technically the more preservative you have in it, and not just that salt tasty. So I'm gonna take a little bit of kosher salt. I'm gonna put at least a half a tablespoon in each one. Ooh, that one's a little more, but that's all right. You can kind of use any salt that you have. Kosher salt's usually what they suggest, but that's usually what I use. But if you want to give a little extra kick, use some seasoning salt. But I'm just going to put salt in it. Regular kosher salt. Ta-da! Then pepper. You gotta have some pepper in there. So I'm gonna grind fresh pepper into each one of these. Beautiful. Okay. So, and for an extra kick, I've never tried this before, but I'm gonna put a little bit of regular crushed red pepper in there. In some of them, not all of them. Just see if I can add a little bit of heat to some of them. And it's seasoning, so there's kind of no such thing as too much. There we go. Put that in half of them. Ta-da! So now I'm going to kind of take that and try to kind of mush that seasoning down in there a little bit again. It'll cook into it really well. Like a lot of the places, or a lot of the other people that I know that have done this, a recipe similar, again, they don't even bother mixing it in. They just sprinkle it right on top and throw it in the canner and go. But I'm just trying to kind of help push it down in there a little bit. But once the meat cooks, it'll create its own brine, and then that brine will mix with those seasonings and then get through the whole thing. And it'll be absolutely amazing. Ta-da! There we go. Okay, so I'm gonna wipe these rins off, heat the lids for another minute, and then we'll close them up, get them sealed, and then it's time to go in the pressure canner. All right, so I'm gonna heat these lids up for just another minute. They still feel warm, but I'm just gonna give them like 10-20 seconds in there to just warm them back up a little bit more in this clean water. I'm gonna throw a fresh paper towel down here. They're sitting on something that's, in theory, should be very clean. Forgetting to wipe the lids. Just get a dab of just a little bit of water, hot water boiling if you can, and real quick go along and clean the lip of these jars, because you don't want anything up there, because any little flake or speck could mess with your seal, and the whole point of these is to seal them so that way it lasts a long time. Alrighty, now let's take these lids, pop all these lids on. Ooh, hot, 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 hot. Here we go. Now, we take our rings and put those on. Now, you don't have to reef them tight. You're just a gentle hand tight. That's all you got to do. Just gently hand tight. There we go. Alright, so that's what they'll look like right now. But now, I'm going to go fire up the pressure canner, get the hot water in. So now we're going to take these and put them in this hot water in here. You can see I'm going to have to add more water, but we'll see. Once I get all these in, it may end up being about, you want it to be about an inch above them. And oh yeah, that looks like that's going to work just fine. Ooh, hot, 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 hot. Ooh. All right, and last but certainly not least, put that one in there. Heat is on high. They're officially in there. There's roughly an inch of water above them. So now we're going to line our lid up. We've got our arrows here. We got to line that up with this little spot here. Lock it in place. Then you got to go along with each of your screws and go opposite end to opposite end. You just kind of finger tighten them to start. Kind of doing like you're doing with a tire, kind of star pattern it a little bit here. Opposite end as well to opposite end. And then another opposite end. To the other opposite end. Now, once you've done that, now I'll go through, I'll give them all one more good tightening. There we go. We're good to go. So now always check this and make sure it's clean, because that is where your weight's going to go on that holds your pressure. Now we just go with our specs. We're doing quarts. Got to do them for 90 minutes, and we're in 0 to 1,000 feet, 10 pounds. So here's my little weight. There's my 10-pound mark. So now we got to let it start to get up to a boil, and we got to wait until that is just a steady stream of steam coming out. Once that's a steady stream of steam, we put this little guy on there. So now we're starting to get a steady stream of steam blasting out of that. Don't put your hands on top of it because it's plenty hot. Now we're going to put on our number 10. And now we're going to wait until that starts to jiggle and starts to let out a little bit of steam, and then we'll start our timer. There it is. It's jiggling. It's steaming. It's up to pressure. And my timer is started. So we got 90 minutes. 90 minutes to let it do its thing. The timer has gone off, and we've pulled the weight and finishing letting the pressure out. Once the pressure is completely out and it's cooled off, we'll take the lid off and take them out. There we go. So you can see that's why I always have to have it an inch or so roughly of water on top, because you can see now that it's cooling off, that water has dissipated quite a bit because how much of it's turned to steam. Then you can see the meat all cooked up in there. You can see it's still moving around. It's still bubbling up in there. He's basically turns it into a heck of a good stew. I mean, it falls apart. Oh, so good. But we'll let it keep cooling off for another 20 minutes or so, and then I'll pull them out and we'll get a good look at them. Okay, and here we go. So this is what it kind of should look like when you're done. Now you see this one here, I'm unhappy because it sealed great and it sealed good, but that's too much air. That is too much air. It needs to be like, ideally it should be all the way up right to the lip and everything should be submerged. This one's fine. That one back here, this one's good. But this one here and this one here, I'm probably just gonna end up opening up and eating. Like this one's still bubbling like crazy. So this one will seal more, like this will slowly bring the water, that air will slowly come up to the top a little bit more, or seal it up. There'll be less airspace, I should say. But otherwise, that's it. Cool them off and then eat it. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and open one of these. I'll grab another one because they are still a little warm. And then grab ourselves a little butter knife. There we go. Oh, that smells really good. Oh, that smells good. So, we'll grab ourselves a spoony spoon or a forky fork. Look at that. Now, it's been a couple years since I've made this recipe, so note to self, I should have put a little bit of water in each one of them to get that to lessen the amount of airspace in them, because you want pretty much no air in there. But Ta-da!